Hey guys, welcome back to Unit 8, Day 3 notes. We're going to pick up with number 4. So the first thing that we are going to do is check for GCF. Looking at my A value is 3. The only thing that can divide into 3 is 3. So we'll check 13. 13 cannot be divided by 3, so we do not have a GCF. Next, we will make our A times C and B chart. So our A value is 3. Our C value is negative 56. So we'll multiply 3 times negative 56 to get negative 168. And our B value is negative 13. Remember, when we are doing this, we need to go and list all of our factor pairs to see if we can find something that adds to be negative 13. To do this, you'll go to Table in your calculator and do negative 160, or don't do negative, just do regular 168 divided by x. Start at one step by one and list all the pairs. So we have 1 and 68, 2 and 84, 3 and 56, 4 and 42, 6 and 28, 7 and 24, 8 and 21, 12 and 14. So looking at all of these numbers, there's not going to be any that add up to be 13 the way that they are now, or negative 13, excuse me. So for me to add two numbers together and get a negative, that means that they both need to be negative, or the larger number needs to be negative. However, when I multiply to get a negative, I need one positive and one negative. So between one positive and one negative, and the larger being a negative, I'm going to go and mark all of my larger numbers on the right hand side to be negative. And see what they add to be. So negative 1, or 1 and negative 168 is negative 167. Negative 84 and 2 is negative 82. 3 and negative 56 is negative 53. 4 and negative 42 is negative 38. 6 and negative 28 is negative 22. 7 and negative 24 is negative 17. 8 and negative 21 is negative 13. We can stop right there because we know this is now our factor pair, and we can bust our B. So we're going to take 3x squared, bring it down, and split up negative 13x to positive 8x and negative 21x minus 56. We'll group them. And I'm going to group them by rewriting them this time, because I need to put a plus in between my two parentheses. Now I'll take my GCF from both groups. Now I'll take my funny GCF, which is my binomial GCF, and I'm left with x and negative 7. And that's my final answer. Moving on to number 5. The first thing that we need to do for number 5 is check for a GCF. So I can list out all my factor pairs or each number, or I can try by looking at 12 to see if 12 goes into 90. 90 divided by 12 is 7.5, so that won't work. The next smallest factor that goes into 12 is 6. So we'll check 90 divided by 6. That gives me a whole number. And 150 divided by 6 also gives me a whole number. So 6 will be my GCF that I will pull out prior to doing my table. That leaves me with 2n squared minus 15n plus 25. Now I'm going to make my a times c table with just my trinomial that is simplified. I will leave my GCF on the outside and use what's on the inside of my parentheses to find my factor pairs. A times c here is 50 and b is negative 15. My factor pairs are 1 and 50, 2 and 25, 5 and 10. We see that 1 and 50 gives me 51, 2 and 25 gives me 27, and 5 and 10 gives me 15. Close to what I'm looking for, but not exactly there. We need my 15 to be negative. And the only way to do that is to make 5 and 10 negative to give me negative 15. I can make both of these negative because a negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 5 times negative 10 equals 50. And when you add them together, it still gives me my negative. So now I can move on. I will keep my 6 out front for my GCF, and now I'll bust my b to negative 5n and negative 10n. Rewrite it. 2n squared minus 5n plus negative 10n plus 25. Take the GCF out of my first group, which is n. Then my GCF out of my second group, which is negative 5. And now we will take my funny GCF and what's remaining is n minus 5. Moving on to number 6, b squared minus 81. We're going to treat this like normal. We're going to make the a times c table and continue on. So, a times c in this case is going to be negative 81. And there is no b value in the center, a term with just a variable, not a variable squared. So that will be 0. Now I'll do my factors of 81. So in my table, I'll do 81 divided by x, and that gives me 1 and 81. 2 doesn't give me a problem. 3 and 27. And then 9 and 9. So since my a times c value is negative, we know that I must have one negative and one positive. So to make it add to be 0, they're going to have to be the same number, but one negative and one positive. So my only option here is 9 and 9. One will be positive, one will be negative, and that will give me 0. So b squared, I don't know what's happening there. Hold on. B squared plus 9b minus 9b plus, minus 81. I'll group my terms. And then take my GCF. My funny GCF is the binomial. And what I'm left with is b minus 9. Moving on to number 7. We're going to go straight to the a times c chart here. A times c is negative 80, and b is negative 2. I'll list all my factor pairs. Remember to do this, you go to table in your calculator. You take your A times C value, in this case is negative 80, and you divide it by X. So my factor pairs will be 1 and 80, 2 and 40, 4 and 20, 5 and 16, 8 and 10. This is another example of how you can, or you need to, pay attention to your negatives and positives. So to multiply to get a negative, again, that's a positive times a negative. We're also adding to get a negative, so the bigger number needs to be negative. 1 and negative 80 gives me negative 79. 2 and negative 40 gives me negative 38. 4 and negative 20 gives me negative 16. 5 and negative 16 gives me negative 11. 8 and negative 10 gives me negative 2. So 8 and negative 10 gives me what I'm looking for. Now I can bust the B. Negative 2 breaks up to positive 8m and negative 10m. Now I will group. And factor out my GCF. Now I'll factor out my funny GCF, which is m plus 8. And that leaves me with m minus 10. Moving on to number 8. With number 8, we're going to need to check for a GCF again. So I'm always going to start with my A value to check to see if that works. My A value is 6. I'll divide that into 78 to see if I get a whole number. 78 divided by 6 is 13. And 180 divided by 6 is 30. So that will work as my GCF. So I will get 6 out front. It leaves me with p squared plus 13p plus 30. We'll do the A times C table. A times C is 30. B is 13. So we have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. They're both positives, so I don't have to change any of my factor pairs to negatives. I'll just add them together to see if I get 13. I get 31, 17, and 13. Since that one equals 13, we know that that's what we will use, and now rewrite it. Since there's no negative signs in this group, I'm not going to rewrite it to group it. I'm just going to throw in my parentheses since there's already a plus in the middle. Now I will take out a GCF. My first GCF is P. It leaves me with P plus 3. My second GCF is 10 and leaves me with P plus 3. My funny GCF that I'll factor out now is P plus 3. And that leaves me with P plus 10. Remember to not leave out your GCF as you continue your problem. It needs to stay out front because that's the only way to make your final answer equal to your initial problem. Without that 6, we couldn't get back to the original problem. Moving on to number 9. First thing that I need to do is check for a GCF. The only possible GCF here is 3. So I'll take 23, divide it by 3, and it does not give me a whole number. So I do not have a GCF here, so we can go straight to my A times C chart. A times C is 120, and my B value is 23. So in my table, I'll do 120 divided by x to find all of my factor pairs. 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 4 and 30, 5 and 24, 6 and 20, 8 and 15, 10 and 12. Since my problem has plus signs between all of its terms, I won't have to change anything in my factor pair column. I'll just go down and add my terms together to see if I get 23. So I get 121, 62, 43, 34, 29, 26, and 23. I can stop there because that's what I'm looking for, and now I can bust my B. 3x squared plus 8x plus 15x plus 40. Just a quick recap. 3x squared just comes down. 40 comes down and does not get changed. However, 23x breaks up into two terms, 8x and 15x. I have not changed the problem, remember. 8x plus 15x still gives me 23, and that's why we're able to do factoring in this way. So now I will group and take out a GCF. My GCF here is x. I get 3x plus 8. My GCF here is 5, and I get 3x plus 8 again. My funny GCF is 3x plus 8. And I'm left with x plus 5. All right. For some practice, I want you guys to try number 10 through 12 on your own. The answers will be on the key followed